They say betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from the ones you trust most. They're wrong. It's not the cut that kills you. It's the moment you realize the people holding the knife are the same ones you'd have died to protect. My name is Sam, I'm 30. Up until a few months ago, I thought I had the life I always wanted. A steady job, a small but warm home, and Megan, my wife of 2 years. She was 28, beautiful in a way that felt familiar and safe. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I believed in us. When Megan told me she was pregnant, it was like someone had handed me the future I'd been chasing my whole life. I could see it already. Me putting together a crib, painting the baby's room, sticking cheesy little cloud decals on the walls. I thought I'd found my forever. I didn't know that the dream was about to rot from the inside before it ever had the chance to live. Before I share what came next, the choices I made, the truths I uncovered, I want to know where you're watching from. Please hit subscribe and leave a comment with your city. Your stories, your voices, they matter. And if you've ever felt trapped in a love that turned into something else entirely, maybe my story will feel familiar. It started small. The kind of things you brush off because you think you're overreacting. The way Megan spoke about my twin brother Liam, always with this strange over-the-top admiration. His visits, once rare, became almost a weekly thing, always with some excuse. I was just in the area. I wanted to see how you're doing. Brought something for work. I wanted to believe that was all it was. After all, Liam was my brother, family. But something in my gut started whispering, this isn't right. That whisper grew louder each week until it became a constant hum in the back of my mind. One night stands out. Megan and I had argued over something stupid. She went outside for some air. Half an hour later, Liam showed up at my door, claiming he was just passing through. He looked me dead in the eye and said, Megan needs more support right now. You should be more understanding. I remember freezing in place. What kind of brother says that to the husband of a woman he doesn't even live with? I brushed it off. I told myself I was being paranoid, but I wasn't. I just didn't want to face what my heart already knew. Then Megan started avoiding me. Her eyes didn't linger on mine anymore. Conversations became short. Her phone never left her side. When I asked, she blamed the pregnancy, hormones, stress, exhaustion, until one night, I couldn't take it anymore. I waited until she was asleep, her breathing deep and steady beside me. My hands were shaking when I took her phone. It didn't take long. Messages, photos, explicit photos sent to Liam, words I can't unsee. Only you make me feel this way. I want the baby to feel your love too. My stomach twisted. I thought the worst was behind me. It wasn't. Then I found the videos, several clips, Liam and Megan having sex, her pregnant belly on full display, different rooms in the house, including our bedroom. Our bed. One message from Liam read, I've never wanted you more than now. That belly makes you even hotter. I can't explain the kind of disgust that ran through me. This wasn't just betrayal. This was something twisted, planned, enjoyed. They had filmed it like a trophy. I don't remember how long I stood there, the phone heavy in my hand. When Megan woke up and saw my face, she froze. I asked her one question. Is it his? She didn't answer. She just cried. That silence was the most brutal answer I've ever received. 2 years of marriage gone. A life I thought I'd built with love revealed as a lie. And the child I'd been dreaming of holding might not even be mine. But that was only the beginning. I wish I could tell you this kind of pain was new to me, that this betrayal was an exception in my life, but it wasn't. From the time we were kids in Brookhaven, there were 2 versions of reality in my family. There was Liam's reality, where rules bent for him, where mistakes were forgiven before they were even acknowledged. And then there was mine, where one wrong move meant I was ungrateful, careless, a disappointment. We were identical twins, but in my parents' eyes, we couldn't have been more different. Liam could skip school, fail tests, break promises, and still be praised as a good soul. I had to be perfect just to be seen. I'll never forget the year I got into a top university on a partial scholarship. I thought finally they'll be proud of me. They threw a party. Not for me, for Liam. A backyard barbecue so he wouldn't feel left out. I stood in the corner watching my mother pop balloons with Liam's name on them, while my father told everyone how Liam was an example of kindness, despite his failing grades. I stood there holding back the urge to leave, realizing in that moment that if I wanted to build a life worth living, I'd have to do it without them. I worked 2 jobs while studying, sold used books, slept on friends' couches when rent got too tight. It wasn't noble, it was survival. Meanwhile, Liam got a used car as a gift, even though he neither worked nor studied seriously. I remember my mom saying, "He has such a good heart. He deserves it." And I remember thinking, what am I then? Defective? It took years, but I accepted the truth. My biggest flaw in their eyes was simply not being Liam. So when I found out about Megan and him, it wasn't just my marriage shattering, it was decades of wounds ripping open at once. The betrayal wasn't just between a husband and wife. It was blood deep. It was the final proof that no matter what I built, no matter how far I thought I'd escaped, the same poison would always find its way back. And as much as I wanted to collapse under it, part of me knew I couldn't. Because if I was right about what came next, I wasn't just losing Megan, I was about to lose everything. I grew up with a constant gnawing feeling that I didn't matter. Not really. It was like I was standing in a crowded room shouting for someone to see me, and all I got were glances through glass, faint, distant, and conditional. Every bit of affection in my family seemed to come with a rulebook, one that only applied to me. When I was a teenager, I got sick, badly sick. The doctor said I needed surgery. I went to the hospital alone. No one came. No one even asked me how it went. My parents said, "You're strong. You can handle it." But when Liam once got a sore throat, my mother cried in the emergency room like the world was ending. It burned. And still, I don't know why. But I never let go of this tiny, pathetic flicker of hope. This whisper in the back of my head that said, maybe someday they'll see me. Maybe if I work hard enough, if I prove myself, they'll love me the way they love him. That hope kept me tied to them. It made me give them more chances than they deserved. Years later, when Liam reached out to me, part of me still wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was something left between us worth saving. That despite all the favoritism, the blind praise, the history of being invisible, there was still some thread of brotherhood buried underneath. I didn't know that giving him that chance would be the worst decision I'd ever make. I didn't realize I was inviting the wolf into my home, the wolf who wore my face, and that he wasn't coming alone. It had been almost 10 years without real contact. Then one Sunday night, out of nowhere, my phone buzzed. "Liam, hey brother, I miss you. Life's too short to hold grudges." I stared at the message longer than I should have. The worst part is, for a second, I wanted to believe him. By then, I was married to Megan. We lived in Riverview. My life was stable. Not perfect, but steady. I thought maybe it was time to turn the page, let the past be the past. Liam didn't sound much different, but he talked like he was trying to start over. He sent me pictures from when we were kids, brought up old stories. He pulled me back with nostalgia, the kind that tricks you into forgetting the bad parts. I told myself he was being sincere. I told myself that opening the door was an act of maturity. What I didn't know was that I was unlocking a door I'd never be able to close again. The first time I went to visit my parents after reconnecting with him, something felt off. They still lived in Brookhaven, in the same house where all those years of favoritism had played out. But this time they were colder with me than usual. And strangely, Liam wasn't the obvious center of attention like he normally was. He strolled in late, made jokes at everyone's expense, brought a cheap bottle of wine, and they acted like he'd brought gold bars. I kept my smile in place, talked about work, mentioned Megan. My mother laughed and said, "She must be a saint to put up with your ways." I forced a laugh too, even though the words stung. For some reason, I doubled down. I invited my parents and Liam over for dinner at my place. I thought maybe it would be a step forward. That night I noticed Megan seemed drawn to him. Not in an obvious way, but enough that I caught it. She laughed at his jokes, leaned in when he spoke. They traded quick glances I told myself were nothing. He was good at that, at charming people on the surface while hiding the rot underneath. The weeks that followed blurred together. Liam started showing up more. Sometimes alone, sometimes with some vague excuse like, "I forgot my charger from last time," or "I was nearby." Megan started talking about him more too. "Did you know Liam plays guitar?"
Did he tell you he traveled alone through South America?
She made it sound like some heroic comeback story, brushing off his history of laziness and recklessness as part of a beautiful tale of growth. I wanted to believe her, I wanted to believe them. But little by little it felt like Liam was taking up more space in my life than I'd ever given him permission to. What I didn't realize then was that by that point, they had already crossed the line. The innocent dinners, the quick glances, the too long laughs, they weren't harmless. It was already happening. While I poured wine in the kitchen, they were exchanging subtle touches. While I planned a romantic weekend trip with Megan, she was sleeping with Liam in my guest room. Or worse, in the garage when they thought I wouldn't notice. Months later, when Megan told me she was pregnant, I thought the child was mine. Now I see it for what it really was, the product of a betrayal so disgusting, so deliberate, it could only have been planned. The truth is, I think I felt it deep down, that something was wrong. But when you've spent your whole life being treated like the one who's too sensitive, you start doubting your own instincts. You start thinking you're imagining things. You start telling yourself, don't make a scene, don't overreact. It's that exact mindset, drilled into me since childhood, that stopped me from confronting them when I still had the chance. Those first months of Megan's pregnancy, I was all in. I read books on fetal development, researched cribs, played with names. I'd put my ear to her stomach trying to hear the heartbeat. And there was Liam, always around, more than usual. Showing up without calling, always with an excuse. And the way he acted toward Megan's belly. He'd kneel down, put his hand there like it was his right, talk to the baby as if he were the father. You're going to be strong like your dad. The first time I laughed. The second time it didn't feel like a joke. Megan brushed it off, said I was overthinking. But when I asked her directly if she was too close to Liam, she laughed. No, she said, eyes looking anywhere but mine. It was the kind of laugh that feels rehearsed. The kind that hides more than it admits. Looking back, that was the moment the alarm bells were deafening and I still didn't hear them. I still clung to the idea that I was wrong, that I was imagining it, that Liam was just trying to be part of my life again. I had no idea that what they were really building together would destroy mine. I started noticing it the way you notice a faint smell of smoke before you see the flames. Small things at first. The way Megan smiled when Liam was around, not just a smile, but one with a softness that didn't belong to me anymore. A smile that carried weight, familiarity, a private language I was never taught. She dressed differently on the days he was expected. A touch more deliberate. A certain care in her hair and clothes. And the strangest part wasn't what they did, but what they didn't do. The exaggerated way they avoided being alone together for too long, or at least pretended to. It should have reassured me, but it didn't. It felt staged, like actors making sure the audience never saw them behind the curtain. At night, when she fell into deeper sleep beside me, I'd look at her belly rising and falling and wonder, really wonder if the child she carried was mine. That question didn't come all at once. It was more like a slow drip of poison into the bloodstream, impossible to ignore once it built up. I buried it under rationalizations, the stress of pregnancy, my own history of overthinking, the paranoia that comes from years of subtle rejection. But the doubt was there, waiting for a crack to crawl through. The crack came one Thursday around 2 a.m. I woke up thirsty and went to the kitchen. The house was still, the kind of silence you can hear pressing against your eardrums. I poured water, drank, and headed back toward the bedroom. That's when I saw it. Megan's phone on the nightstand, screen glowing with new notifications. Something in me snapped. Not like a dramatic thunderclap, but like a quiet wire breaking under too much strain. I picked it up without even thinking, my hands moving before my brain caught up. Months ago, she'd told me her unlock code, a gesture of trust back then. I entered it now with a kind of cold inevitability. The messages were there waiting for me. I scrolled, and I swear to God I wanted it to be a nightmare. I wanted to wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding, and tell myself none of it was real. But the screen didn't lie. Explicit messages, photos. Liam's words crawling across the screen like something rotten. That big belly drives me crazy. I can't wait to see you again. Yesterday was too much. You were even tighter. And then Megan's reply, the one that made my stomach turn inside out. I want him to keep thinking he's the father. That makes everything more exciting. I felt my knees threaten to give way. But it didn't stop there. I found videos, not old ones, not from before the pregnancy, but recent. Clear signs she was in her second trimester, their bodies tangled together, her belly visible, her voice saying things to him that made my skin crawl. Different positions, different rooms. One was on the living room sofa, the same sofa where she and I had watched a movie together just the night before. Same couch, same pillow. Seeing it felt like someone had taken a knife and carved into me from the inside. This wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just about sex. It was a conspiracy, an emotional ambush. They had built a stage around me, handed me a role in their twisted little play, and let me believe I was the lead. In reality, I was the fool. Phone still in my hand, I walked into the bedroom and turned on the light. Megan, startled awake, saw my face and went pale in an instant. "Is it Liam's son?" I asked, my voice flat, almost unrecognizable to myself. She didn't answer. She just sat there, frozen, tears starting to fall. "How long?" I pressed. "Since that dinner. Since you two laughed at me when I said this baby was the best thing that ever happened to me." Her answer was small, almost a whisper. "I was going to tell you after the birth. I didn't know how." That was it. That was her defense. That she was going to let me live in the lie until the very end. That she was ready to watch me paint the nursery, choose names, dream dreams for a child that wasn't even mine, just so she could hand me the truth like a death sentence later. The betrayal burned, but the humiliation scorched deeper. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. My body felt too heavy for rage. Instead, I walked out of the room and sat in the living room, the same one from the videos, staring into nothing, the images seared into my brain. Megan stayed in the bedroom crying. I didn't move until morning. When the sun came up, I still hadn't decided what I felt. Hatred, disgust, a kind of grief that didn't have a name. But what I didn't realize then was that the discovery, the shattering, was just the prologue. The real devastation was still ahead, because betrayal breaks your heart, but the divorce system will break your spine. Megan didn't just leave. She struck first. Filed papers painting herself as the victim. Claimed she had escaped a toxic, controlling man who cut her off from friends and family. The same man, me, who had bought her tickets to visit her parents in Arizona, who had encouraged her to see her friends, who had sent an Uber to pick her up after nights out. And Liam? Silent, not even a hint of accountability. The worst part? My own parents sided with her. They gave written statements saying they had witnessed my hostile behavior toward Megan. The same father who used to say, men should keep their mouths shut and deal with it, now accused me of aggression. The same mother who had minimized my pain since childhood swore Megan deserved better. It felt like being trapped in a theater where the roles had been swapped overnight. I was the villain now, and the real villains were dressed in the rags of victims. In court, Megan cried on cue, said she feared me, that she stayed out of emotional dependence. I sat there silent, trying not to come apart while my life was stripped for public viewing. The verdict? The car, gone because it was in her name even though I'd made the down payment in every single installment. Half our savings hers, despite the fact I'd earned most of it. She hadn't worked since the start of our marriage. Alimony based on my full income. And the child? The court didn't care about DNA. They cared about presumption of paternity. I was married to the mother. Therefore, I was the legal father, which meant I was now financially responsible for my brother's child, conceived while he was sneaking into my home behind my back. It would sound like a bad joke if it wasn't my life. I thought about appealing, but my lawyer was honest. It would be a long, expensive battle with no guarantee. I didn't have the strength. I barely slept. Food turned to ash in my mouth. I lived with a constant knot in my stomach, like my own body wanted to turn itself inside out. More than once I considered selling everything, disappearing, starting over in some far-off state where no one knew my name. But I stayed, maybe out of stubbornness, maybe because I felt like if I left, they'd win completely. Deep down, I knew this pain needed to be transformed into something else, something that could one day serve as either redemption or revenge. But at that moment, all I could do was bury the corpse of my marriage and try to figure out if the man who came out of this would be anything like the one who went in. The strangest part wasn't Megan's betrayal. It wasn't even Liam's smirk burned into my memory. It was the quiet betrayal that came after, from the people who had given me my name. The shift happened fast. My parents didn't just side with Megan. They folded themselves into her corner like they'd been there the whole time. One Sunday afternoon, over burnt coffee in my mother's kitchen, I'd brought up the possibility of reviewing the alimony. Just reviewing. Her face tightened like I'd suggested pushing a stroller down a staircase. "You're petty, Sam," she said. Not angry, not defensive, just disappointed like I'd failed some silent test. "It's not that baby's fault." I wanted to ask her, petty? After everything? Petty? When the woman you're defending is raising a child that was conceived while I was in the same house, sleeping in the same bed? But I didn't. I swallowed the acid, breathed slow, and walked out. I knew the rules. If I shouted, I was proving them right. If I stayed quiet, at least I could pretend I still had dignity. The house was mine now. A hollow victory, but a victory nonetheless. 4 walls, a roof, and silence. The kind of silence that feels alive. The kind that remembers. Those walls had heard it all. The laughter I thought was ours. The whispered calls that weren't meant for me. The slow fracture of trust. And now they became the witnesses to something else. The long, ugly process of rebuilding. Rebuilding is not the same as getting up. Getting up is survival. Rebuilding is deciding what to do with the shards left in your hands. Shards you could drop, or sharpen. For the first time in months, something flickered inside me. Not hope, not forgiveness. A spark. Something primitive, vengeful. The realization that this story wasn't going to end with them laughing and me paying their bills until my bones turned to dust. After the court ruling, I didn't want to move on. I wanted to vanish. But disappearing would mean they won. So instead I did the opposite. I buried myself in work. I'd been with a tech company for a few years. Middle position, stable, not flashy. When I walked back into the office after the judge's decision, I wasn't motivated. I was weaponized. Anger became fuel. Every spreadsheet, every late-night problem, every project nobody wanted, I took them. While Megan and Liam were sipping wine under the shadow of their lie, I was in the trenches, inch by inch, building something they couldn't touch. The months blurred. Managers started to notice. One pulled me aside, said my focus was unshakable, my work a model for others. An important client requested me personally, and then the first promotion, with it a bigger salary. A bonus so large I had to read the number twice. It wasn't happiness, but it was relief. The kind of relief you get when you realize you can still build something alone, and this time no one gets a piece of it. The company handed me keys to a brand new corporate car, 0 miles, fully loaded. I remember sliding into the leather seat, inhaling that new car scent and thinking, this is it. Not the finish line, the starting gun. My turning point. I decided to market. Alone. A high-end restaurant in downtown Brookhaven. I ordered the most expensive dish on the menu, the kind of wine you have to pronounce carefully. I posted a single photo on social media. Just me, a glass of wine, the caption, "New beginnings don't need an audience." I didn't know that one photo would wake a ghost. 3 days later, my phone rang. "Unknown number." I answered without thinking. "Hello, son." My mother's voice, like she'd just stepped out for milk and was calling to check in. "Can you come by the house? We need to talk." No apology, no acknowledgement, just an invitation. I asked why. A pause, then, "We're going through a difficult stage, Megan, Liam. The situation is complicated." I almost laughed out loud. After a year of silence, of signing statements against me, they now needed, what? Advice? Money? Curiosity won over anger. I went. The shock hit before I even stepped through the door. They'd moved. Not just moved, upgraded. A larger house in a manicured neighborhood. Hedges trimmed with surgical precision. Everything gleamed. I found out later it was paid for partly from my alimony, partly from the settlement Megan got after gutting me in court. Inside, the living room wall held a massive framed photo of the baby. Below it, a plaque, "Our Miracle." My stomach lurched. Every step in that house felt like walking deeper into some twisted sitcom where I was the punchline. Then came the performance. Megan appeared, baby in her arms, smiling politely. No apology, no "how are you?" Just that smooth, cordial tone people use at awkward dinner parties. Liam lounged on the couch, legs stretched, smirk untouched. My parents sat at the table, faces calm, as if nothing about this tableau was grotesque. The air shifted. The approach was coming. My mother inhaled slowly. "We're going through a difficult time, Sam." I stayed silent. My father spoke next. "Liam hasn't been able to get back into the market. Megan's overwhelmed with the baby. Our pensions barely cover the expenses of the new house." And then the line, the one that almost made me choke on the absurdity. "You've been with this promotion. You could help a little more. After all, it's all family now." I sat there watching their faces, hearing the faint coo of the child who was never mine. And I realized something. They didn't see me as a son anymore. They saw me as a resource. What they didn't know was that the Sam Cole who walked into that house wasn't the man they'd destroyed a year ago. That man was dead. What they were looking at now was something else entirely. They were serious. I could see it in the stillness of their faces. My parents, Megan and Liam, all watching me as if what they were asking was the most reasonable thing in the world. They wanted my money, again, after betraying me, after dragging me through court, after months of siphoning away what was mine. Now they wanted me to swoop in like some savior. Megan was the first to speak. She leaned forward, her voice dripping with the kind of false sincerity she had perfected. "Megan, you know, everything that happened, it was hard for all of us, but it's not the baby's fault." Then she said it. The request. The suggestion that I help with the expenses of the child, my brother's child, as though it were my moral duty to keep their little empire running. It was almost funny. Almost. But the laugh stayed locked inside me. Not because I found it amusing, but because the whole thing was so surreal, so pathetic, so beyond reality that it felt like laughing would somehow legitimize it. They weren't sorry. Not for what they'd done. Not for the lies. They were just afraid. Afraid of losing their steady paycheck, afraid the well was about to run dry. I stood up without a word. My mother reached for my arm, her eyes suddenly wet. "Don't do this to us, Sam. We're your family." I met her eyes and said the only truth left between us. "You did this to yourselves." I walked out the way I had walked in, head high, chest burning, not looking back. The storm hit me the moment I stepped outside. Wind ripping at my clothes, rain slapping my face like hands trying to wake me. The kind of weather that strips away illusions. By the time I reached my car, I was soaked to the bone, but I'd never felt cleaner. Because that was the moment, the exact second, when something in me decided, never again. Never again would I carry anyone who had the pleasure of stabbing me. I didn't even turn on the heat when I got home. I sat on the couch in wet clothes, water pooling on the floor beneath me. For the first time in years, I took a breath without feeling guilty, without feeling the need to apologize for saying no. Because that so-called reconciliation had been nothing more than a desperate act to protect the life they'd built at my expense. And for the first time, I understood something. If everyone needed me to survive, then maybe I had never been the problem. They were the ones who didn't know how to survive without someone else to bleed dry. But I also knew something else. People like them never stop. Silence for them isn't respect, it's preparation. The calm before the next strike. The messages started small. Passive-aggressive little barbs meant to slip under my skin. Mother wrote, "I can't believe what you've become, so cold, so unfeeling." Liam wrote, "You think you're at the top now, but deep down you're still a failure." Then Megan joined in, her voice in a trembling audio message, a performance worthy of an award. Megan, audio. "Your indifference, and it hurts, Sam. The baby feels your absence." The baby, my brother's baby, it didn't stop there. Megan started bringing up alimony again. She told me my recent promotion meant the current amount wasn't fair anymore. Fair? As if this were a business transaction and not a punishment wrapped in legal paperwork. She threatened another lawsuit, claiming the child's needs had increased. She hinted at alleging emotional abandonment, twisting moments from the past into evidence against me. She said I'd created a bond during her pregnancy, that I'd assumed the role of a father figure. And yes, I remembered every one of those moments. Not because they were happy, but because I had lived them sincerely. And apparently she had been filing them away as ammunition. Her voice in my ear. "Do you remember the night you sang to the baby even though you didn't know if he could hear you? Do you remember the first time we felt him kick and you cried?" Every memory she threw at me was a blade. Not because they hurt, but because they were being weaponized. It was clear now. Megan didn't want justice. She wanted control. And the more she spoke, the more urgent it felt. Something had to change. One afternoon, Liam showed up. No call, no warning. He stood at my door like he had some right to be there. I ignored the first knock, then the second. Then he started pounding, his voice rising. "You think you can hide behind your money, Sam? Families for life." I opened the door just enough to tell him to leave or I'd call the police. He didn't move, he just smirked and said, "You might have it now, but you'll end up alone, just like always." Then he left, and the words stayed, echoing in the walls long after the sound of his footsteps was gone. It was all clear now. They didn't just want money, they wanted me miserable. They wanted to keep the narrative alive. I was the cold one, the ungrateful one, because that was easier than admitting they had drained me until there was nothing left. But this time I wasn't breaking. This time I was ready. Me at my desk, printing every text, every threat, every manipulative word, saving Megan's audio files, screenshot after screenshot, each one labeled and dated. Friends speaking on video calls, willing to testify about everything they'd seen, the favoritism, the betrayal. Even cousins coming forward, finally admitting they'd seen this pattern for years. This wasn't self-defense anymore. This was war. My lawyer looked at the pile of evidence, his smile cold. They'll try to keep up the act, but this time we write the script. When I walked into that hearing room, I wasn't the same man from the first time. No shaking hands, no second guessing. I wasn't wondering where I'd gone wrong. Because I finally knew I hadn't. Head high, folder in hand. Every step deliberate. The sight of them, my parents, Megan, Liam, all sitting together like a single unit, didn't shake me. If anything, it confirmed everything. This time they weren't going to walk out with my blood on their hands. This time they were the ones about to bleed. The courtroom was silent enough to hear the shuffle of papers. When the judge asked Megan Cole for her justifications to review the alimony, she leaned forward with the poise of someone who'd convinced herself she could spin gold out of lies. That confidence lasted maybe 3 seconds, because the first video hit like a controlled detonation. On the giant screen, Megan's own voice filled the room, her words, her tone, her laughter, admitting she'd slept with Liam Cole while pregnant. No interpretation needed, no loopholes to wriggle through. Just her, caught in the act of pulling the mask off herself. The sound of it cracked the air in that room. A collective shift. The kind that happens when everyone realizes the truth isn't just whispered. It's screaming. My lawyer didn't stop there. We rolled out screenshots of Megan and Liam's private messages, their running commentary on milking the alimony for as long as possible. The phrasing made even the stenographer blink twice. And then, the intimate clips, not explicit, but damning in implication. Proof of nights they thought no one would ever know about. There it was in black and white, Megan joking that keeping Sam on the hook until the baby's here was worth the effort. Liam agreeing that the Cole family name was their ticket to a lifetime of comfort and, eventually, inheritance. A judge hears a lot in their career, but when we brought in my cousin, the one who'd grown up watching the rot under the surface, the tension shifted again. He didn't hesitate. He described the favoritism my parents lavished on Megan and Liam, how they'd whispered rumors about my erratic behavior to strengthen Megan's divorce case. That was when I saw it, the judge's jaw tightening. Not out of pity, out of disgust, Megan cried on cue. Liam just sat there, jaw locked, a statue pretending not to be cornered. My parents, called as Megan's own witnesses, tried to spin their stories into something noble. But the contradictions tripped over themselves, their testimonies unraveled in real time, tangling into a knot even they couldn't cut loose from. My lawyer moved like a scalpel. No wasted words. He laid out the truth in layers: betrayal, financial manipulation, coordinated character assassination. Piece by piece he showed the machine they had built, and the way they had aimed it at me. When the gavel finally came down, the ruling was blunt and decisive. Alimony is suspended effective immediately. Miss Cole may pursue legal avenues with Mr. Liam Cole, the biological father. There is no longer any justification to keep Mr. Sam Cole financially linked to this matter. Just like that, I was free. Free in a way that went beyond numbers on paper. The judge's words didn't just sever a legal obligation. They stripped away the last tether to the life they'd built on my back. Megan's reaction was a performance. She stormed out of the courtroom, sobbing loud enough to echo, declaring everything unfair, as if she hadn't been the architect of her own disaster. Liam broke his silence just long enough to curse at the judge, earning himself a sharp reprimand. My parents couldn't even meet my eyes. As I walked toward the exit, Megan's mother appeared in my path. Her voice was low, her gaze fixed on the floor. I'm sorry, I knew, but I couldn't do anything. I nodded once, no anger left. No need for her explanations. I had nothing left to collect from that world, not apologies, not validation, not scraps of closure. That night I went home and opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for something. The label read Rebirth. Fitting. I sat on the couch, breathing in the silence. No phone buzzing with accusations. No guilt-cloaked demands. No faint echoes of a crying baby used like a bargaining chip. Just me. For the first time in years, just me. It wasn't revenge I felt, it was justice. And justice, even slow, jagged justice, has its own quiet weight when it finally arrives. But my story has never allowed for a perfectly clean fade-out. Because the next morning, as I turned the corner toward my house, I heard voices. Not neighbors. Them. Megan, Liam, my parents. All standing in front of my home like it was the set of some warped family protest. Megan cradled the baby like a prop, eyes wide with manufactured desperation. Liam paced, muttering curses under his breath. My mother cried for effect, while my father stood with arms crossed, wearing that permanent expression of, "You're the ungrateful one here." It was their last card, all or nothing. I kept walking, but my mother stepped in front of me, blocking the path to my own door. "Are you really going to abandon us like this?" My voice was calm. "I didn't abandon anyone, I just stopped letting you abuse me." That's when Liam snapped. He closed the distance between us in 3 strides, jabbing a finger toward my face. His voice was sharp, raw. "You're destroying this family. You're selfish. You think just because you have money and status now, you're better than us." And before I could answer, his hand was on my collar, yanking me forward. Everything went still. Not from fear, from clarity. I was finally looking at Liam without the lens of shared blood, without the noise of my parents' excuses. Just the man he was, a bully who'd run out of places to hide. "Get your hand off me," I said evenly, "or you're leaving here in handcuffs." He froze, grip loosening. Megan's voice broke into shrill panic. My father tried to play peacemaker. I didn't flinch. I took out my phone and started dialing. Liam stepped back. My mother's voice cracked. "Don't do this, Sam. You're not like that." I met her eyes. "No, I'm not, but you made me be." That landed. I saw it slice through their little theater, cutting the scene in half. They weren't used to losing control of the script. But this time, the curtain came down on my terms. No shouting followed. No parting insults. Just the sound of footsteps, heavy, retreating until they were gone. When I shut the door behind me, the air in the house felt different. Lighter. I pulled off the wrinkled shirt, walked to the window. The street was empty. No ghosts. No siege. Peace wasn't something I had to chase anymore. It was already in the room with me. The war hadn't ended because they surrendered. It ended because I'd finally stopped fighting for people who never deserved the fight. In the days that followed, I blocked every number, every account. I spoke to my lawyer about a restraining order, just in case. I replaced the locks, repainted the walls, moved the furniture. It wasn't renovation, it was an exorcism. And with every stroke of paint, every rearranged corner, the echoes of that family's hold on me got quieter, not gone. Some scars don't vanish, but faint enough that I could finally hear my own thoughts again. That was the real victory. People ask if I regret cutting them off. I don't. The only regret is that I didn't do it sooner. Because sometimes survival isn't about clinging to who shares your blood. It's about protecting who doesn't hurt your soul.